Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I welcome you to the Pakistan Studies course Hum1112. I am Professor Talat Khurshid. Today is our 19th lecture. In the last two lectures, 17th and 18th, we discussed constitutional development and the number of the constitutions passed. Before that, we discussed the baseline for the Constitution, and the baseline for the Constitution was like objective resolution. Pakistan, in the short history of 60 plus years, has undergone three constitutions. We started under the Act of 1935 and finally managed to have a constitution approved in 1956, and that was a British pattern parliamentary system of government. But then in a period of 2 years, in 58, the constitution was abrogated and martial law was imposed. Thereafter, we worked under martial law, and finally, in 1962, we got another constitution. This time, the constitution was different. The type of the constitution is closer to the American system of government, and that is like presidential form of government. In the parliamentary system of government, there are two offices. One is President, who is head of the state, and Prime Minister, who is head of the government. In 1962 Constitution, it was like presidential form of government, and the President is head of the government and head of the state. But that constitution did not work long, and finally again we see martial law in 1968, and the constitution was abrogated, finished, and we started working under martial law. Thereafter, in 1973, unanimously a constitution was passed, and this is a parliamentary form of constitution. But this time, luckily, since 1973 to date, it is like around 40 years that, alhamdulillah, we are under that constitution. No doubt that twice there has been martial law. The constitution was suspended but was never abrogated. We have a military system of operation, legal framework, order, or something like that, but the constitution was never abrogated, and alhamdulillah, we are working under that constitution. Students, what we are going to do, we have discussed in detail the constitutional powers, the fundamental right, the operation of the government. Now, from today onwards, in a couple of coming lectures, we would cover the political history of Pakistan, how politics has been operating, what factors have been operating, what factors have been affecting Pakistan, who has been heading the state, who has been running the government. We would go in a detailed discussion in that. So now today's lecture would be, this political part would be covered in 3 to 4 phases. In the first phase, we would go up to the constitutional making first constitutional making and operation of the government. Then we would go in the second phase, and that was like martial law phase and the second constitution. Then we would go in the third phase, and finally we would come to the latest situation. So as we say, we will be tracing the political history of Pakistan. The first phase is from 1947 to 1958. And 58 is very important, and coincidentally it was month of October that in 1958 turned military regime came in, and army took over, and martial law was imposed in the entire country. So if we start looking our first phase, I have been discussing with you in lot of detail that with lot of struggle, difficult times, uncertainty, weaker position, we Muslims continue their struggle, and in extreme difficult condition we got a homeland for ourselves, and that is like Pakistan. The next task, which was very important, as I said earlier, talked to you, was setting up a country which has no administrative structure. And there were a host of problems which we have counted earlier, which we have discussed, but just to recapitulate, just to refresh your thought process. Riots were taking place, refugee problems were there, economic pressures were there, economic challenges were there, financial constraints were there. There was a negative attitude from India, and India was not willing to accept the independent state. Then we have war in Kashmir, and we have a very tense relation with India. Thanks to our neighbors, thanks to our friends, thanks to Muslim countries that they recognized us, they supported us, and somehow or the other we survived. So in that context we worked, and the biggest leadership was of Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who has now become like Qaid-e-Azam, and since Pakistan adapted 1935 constitution as an interim constitution, so he became the first Governor General of Pakistan, and Liaquat Ali Khan became the first Prime Minister of Pakistan. Now we will see in lot of details that how many Governor Generals were there in Pakistan, and thereafter we will see how many Prime Ministers were there in Pakistan. As I said earlier, Jinnah was the first Governor General of Pakistan, and he was Governor General of Pakistan from September 1947 to 48. And in this period, initially he did lot of hard work running, and his health was deteriorating, and finally he was shifted to Ziyarat, and even there from Ziyarat residency he was looking after his work till his death time. His important colleague, one of the very important person and a member of struggle for independence, was Khaja Nazimuddin, and Khaja Nazimuddin happens to be from then East Pakistan. I told you Pakistan has two wings, and there was a lot of demand in the initial days that East Pakistan should also be given representation in the government. So finally Khaja Nazimuddin who happens to be a senior member in the cabinet, was made the Governor General, and he remained the Governor General from 1948, September 1948, after the death of Father of the Nation, Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah. He became the Governor General, and the approach was to satisfy the Bengali curiosities, the dissatisfaction, unrest in the Bengalis, to satisfy them. And he was Governor General from September 1948 till October 1951. October 51 is very important in the sense that the first Prime Minister was assassinated in Rawalpindi during a procession, during a gathering, Jalsa. He was shot by a gentleman whose name was Said Akbar and happened to be an Afghan. He was planted by somebody, and in Rawalpindi at Liaquat Bagh, when Jalsa just started, and Liaquat Ali Khan stood up for the speech, Said Akbar fired a bullet from his gun, and that hit Liaquat Ali Khan's heart, and he died almost on spot. Said Akbar was immediately on the spot killed by a police officer, and nothing came out thereafter that what was the conspiracy behind all the murders. Anyhow, so Khaja Nazimuddin stepped down from Governor Generalship to the Prime Ministership of Pakistan. And to me, as a student of Pakistan studies, that happens to be the biggest flop in the political history of Pakistan. That generated a very serious feeling that importance of offices and importance of offices with reference to power. Prime Minister happens to be head of the government, and President happens to be head of the state. So the major powers used to rest with the Prime Minister, and Prime Minister happens to be important position. And when Khaja Nazimuddin opted to step down, this was lust of power. In fact, it was not Khaja Nazimuddin who was tempted to step down. It was like Ghulam Muhammad, who was a finance minister, a very shrewd bureaucrat from the British Indian Civil Service, and very outstanding officer, created a situation, tempted Khaja Nazimuddin to become the Prime Minister, and himself become the Governor General. And once he became the Governor General, it was from October 1951, and he remained there for 4 years till October 1955. He played a very dirty politics. He abused rather the office of the Governor General, and it is said that even he got paralysis and he could not speak, even he couldn't write. He was a drunkard also, but he was passing all orders which were effectively implemented, and he was the one who was all the time shaking the government, creating a move which would create disorder in the country. Like the language issue was raised in Khaja Nazimuddin's time, like other issues were raised in other senior time. So he remained the Governor General till the announcement of the Constitution. In the new Constitution of 1956, finally the office became the office of the president, and before that Sikandar Mirza took over and became the president of Pakistan, and from October 1955 till March 1956, till the announcement of the Constitution, he remained the president and continued as presidentship from March 56 to October 58. So he, under the new Constitution, he was the first president of Pakistan. Coming to the prime ministers of Pakistan, in prime ministers of Pakistan, we have like various phases as far as Pakistan is concerned. And the first phase starts with the first phase of Pakistan history, that is the first 11 years. We have like 7 prime ministers in a very short span of time. So this was very tragic, this was very disappointing, but this is how the Pakistan history goes. I told you that the first Prime Minister of Pakistan happens to be Liaquat Ali Khan. And Liaquat Ali Khan was a dedicated right hand of Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the Qaid-e-Azam. And he was extremely involved in the working, in the struggle for the establishment of Pakistan. And he was the one who moved objective resolution. He was the one who wanted to put Pakistan on the right track. And Liaquat Ali Khan basically happens to be a Nawab of one of the East Punjab area of United India. But he gave all his property, asset, and finally moved in Pakistan and started working for Pakistan. He took certain policy decisions which has a long-lasting effect, and when we would come on foreign policy, we will discuss on those issues. When we'll come on economic policies, we will discuss those issues and wherever. But he took important policy decisions, but he was very seriously involved in moving objective resolution, the base on which the Constitution of Pakistan was to be framed at that time. Then comes Khaja Nazimuddin, and Khaja Nazimuddin was a representation, or Khaja Nazimuddin was East Pakistani by origin, a Bengali by origin, and as I said, he stepped down from the office of the Governor General and became the second Prime Minister of Pakistan, the second Governor General and the second Prime Minister of Pakistan. Very important decisions were made in Khaja Nazimuddin's time, and and Ghulam Muhammad was behind so many political moves, and one of the political moves which was very important and essential was that of a language issue, that Urdu, a language issue remained an issue, and Bengalis initially wanted that the national language of Pakistan should be Bengali, because they were of the logic, they were of the argument that Bengal, which is one unit, one compact area, only one language is spoken, and that is Bengali, with small dialectal variations, whereas West Pakistan comprised of areas which had variety of languages, and each language was very different from the other language, like in Sindhi, Punjabi, Balochi, Pashto, Barawari, this Kashmiri, Saraiki, and so many other languages. There's a lot of variation, and since the education level was also less in this part of Pakistan, so everybody didn't knew Urdu, and Urdu was to be learned afresh. So most of the Bengali leaders were of the demand that Bengali should be made as an official language. Though Liaquat Ali Khan made a very clear announcement from the floor of the assembly that Urdu would be the national language, but no clear decision was taken by the government. And finally, Khaja Nazimuddin was the one through whom Chaudhry Ghulam Muhammad got the announcement made, and that announcement created a big gap between the people of East Pakistan and West Pakistan, and Bengalis trace, or Bangladeshis trace their history from the language controversy. Then during his tenure, the Qadiani's issue was taken up, and a strong decision was taken and a lot of problems emerged in Lahore, and a mini martial law was imposed in Lahore. So that was also. So what we see on Khaja Nazimuddin time was full of crisis, political crisis, elections. There were election issues, there were other serious issues, economic issues, international issues, domestic issues. There were a lot of issues, and he couldn't do much. And just after like 2.5 years, his government was gone, and then Muhammad Ali Bogra was put into the office from 1953 to October 1954, April 1953 to October 1954, and then from October 1954 to August 1955 he was in the office. Then comes Chaudhry Muhammad Ali, and he was there for almost 1 year. Then comes Sohrawardi, he was also there for around 1 year. Then comes I. Chundrigar, and finally we see Feroz Khan Noon. He was there for 10 months. Then the martial law was imposed, and so there was a lot of political unrest during all this period. There were a lot of maneuvering taking place. There were a lot of dissatisfactions taking place, and we see the end of the first phase of Pakistan, the democratic regime in Pakistan. And with the end of democratic regime in Pakistan, we see the coming up of martial law. In fact, it was from early days, most probably from Muhammad Ali Bogra's time, that the army was involved in the cabinet, and there used to be ministers in uniform, so they were like insider. They could see, and that is how they were affecting the decision making. They were observing, and they had like very much insight into the political situation, and they were of the view that the politics in Pakistan is not moving in the right direction. In this period, we had other crises, as I said, Kashmir war over there. We had other problems. We had international problems. We have adjustments of refugees problem, settlements of refugees problem there. We have adjustments of the funding from India and the British government. So all these problems were like host of problems for a nearly country which was established, and politically there was a little maturity amongst the politicians. What we see now, if we come back to the main area, the institute, as I said, the major issues were constitutional making, which was very important. Second thing was election at the provincial level, and that was in Punjab and WFP in 1951, Sindh in 1953, and East Bengal, East Pakistan, 1952. So the elections problem was there, and elections did generated a lot of problems at the provincial level. Then we had first Constitutional Assembly, which was dissolved, and the second Constitutional Assembly was constituted to frame. One very important decision which was taken in 1955, and it was a problem that West Pakistan, as I told you, the geography of Pakistan was at that time, we had two wings. One is like West Pakistan finally, and one in the west and other in the east. Now this was on the basis of two-nation theory, where the majority of Muslims would be Pakistan, and East Pakistan or East Bengal was the region where the Muslim opted to be with Pakistan. And West Pakistan, I have narrated the entire story that Punjab and Sindh were very clear about being in Pakistan. NWFP opted to, through a referendum, to join Pakistan, and so same is the case with Balochistan and other princely states located over here. So since it was an issue of parity, that how the provinces should be treated, and in order to build a strength on the western front, all four provinces were merged into one province and was named as West Pakistan. Lahore was declared the capital of West Pakistan, and the government started working accordingly. Now with this, there emerged a slight balance between the country, between the two arms, because East Pakistan happens to be was becoming a very big arm, whereas there was no proportion with reference to other provinces. So on the concept, this popularly known as one unit, because West Pakistan became. Very important thing which took place in the earlier days of Pakistan is unbelievable. That right on in August 1947, we got independence, and in October we organized the first educational conference. Imagine that under all difficult circumstances, under odd circumstances, people have the realization, people had the feeling that the bottom line to solve the problems of Pakistan is through education, and that is through that's why they organized the first education conference in Karachi. It was in October 1947. 14 August we got independence, and in October we were organizing a conference. The conference was very well attended. A lot of issues were discussed, and Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah wanted to attend that conference, but due to unavoidable reason he could not, and he finally his message was read in that conference. And if you look at that conference, the message, it was very pragmatic, it was full of ideas, and it was very strong message in the sense that how the future of Pakistan would be, what future Pakistan state, and right from primary education, child education, mother education to higher education, the view of Muhammad Ali Jinnah was very clear. He talked of Islamic education. He talked of science and culture education, industrialization. He talked of higher education compatible to any advanced countries in the world. He talked of education and research process. So you name it and he talked it. But when the conference ended, the recommendations of the conference were to be formulated, and for that a plan was prepared. Unfortunately, when the plan was prepared and submitted to the Prime Minister, Liaquat Ali Khan was no more there. And Ghulam Muhammad, who happens to be a man of finance, would not accept a separate plan for higher education. This was a 6-year development plan of education in Pakistan, and he would not accept it. And he said, well, this can be a good document, but if we have to do something good for Pakistan, we have to plan on all areas. The other areas were economics, management, agriculture, industrial, and definitely education. So he said, start working on it. And since 1952 onwards, the people worked very hard. And for the first time, a document came up, which was 5-year plan, and it is called First 5-Year Plan, which covers economy, which talks of management, which talks of agriculture, which talks of industrialization, which talks of education. You name an area, and that was covered. And it was a very nice, comprehensive, pragmatic document, and which was worth seeing and worth following. It is said that South Korea people came to Pakistan and had some meetings, and they took our first 5-year plan. We could not implement our 5-year plan, but they took it, and you can see where they are today. They exactly followed our document, and they made our progress, which is leaps and bounds. Anyhow, we prepared a plan. We started 1955 to 1960, but then we see the big crash in the politics, in the government, and martial law came. Because there was lot of political instabilities, and the governments were weak and short-lived government, shattered the whole political system in there. Decline of political parties created bad name for the politicians. There was declining standards in politics, and plutocracy was getting popular. People were changing their loyalties. People were, and this led to the instability at the provincial level. So these are few major issues which came to the surface, and finally we see the coming up of the martial law. As you know, Ayub Khan took over and became the chief martial law administrator and president of Pakistan. Martial law remained imposed from October 1958 to June 1962. Constitutional rule was restored in June 1962 and remained till second martial law, March 1969. So what we see that martial law came in, and when the coming up of the martial law, constitution was abrogated, and Ayub Khan took over as the chief martial law administrator. Important policy measures which were taken during Ayub Khan time was that he was new of the corruption prevailed in the system, the inefficiency prevailed in the system, the lethargy prevailed in the system, the officers were not competent enough to deliver the things, so he sacked or removed a very big number of civilian officers, that is 1662 in numbers. This was a big shake-up as far as civil bureaucracy is concerned, and he just limited the political activity. He imposed restriction on political activities. Political leaders were stopped from taking part in politics for 6 years on the charges of corruption or other charges under law known as ABDO. ABDO was a law imposed on politicians for corruption, and under that they could be banned. They were banned, they were restricted, they were not allowed to work. Ayub Khan remained as Chief Martial Law Administrator and finally got elected as president in 1960 through a referendum. This was like a very interesting situation that he got himself elected as the president through election and was re-elected in 1965 through a presidential election, because now he had the Constitution of 1962, and we have discussed in detail the Constitution of 1962, the level of that was started from grassroots level and the basic democracies, and that was at Union Council, Tehsil Council, District Council, and finally divisional councils where people used to be elected, and it was like 80,000 people would act as an electoral college, 40 from East, 40 from principle of parity was introduced, and got himself elected with a big majority in January 1965 as the president of. Unfortunately, immediately after that, the war took place, and war cost us too much. Ayub Khan was finally affected through war also, his office, and the agreement of Tashkent was a big flop. But basically, if we look at Ayub Khan's program, where economic planning was done for industrial development and green revolution. Ayub Khan introduced land reforms, Ayub Khan introduced industrial reforms, health reform, you name a reform, and Ayub Khan introduced so much so that he also did the first thing when he took over in October 1968. In December, he formed a commission which is known as Sharif Commission, and the task given to Sharif Commission was to identify the faults in the system and the methodology to overcome this system. And Sharif Commission came out with a report, and I would not hesitate calling it as a Bible for education reform. It is a very comprehensive document. It is a very well done document, very well, nicely drafted documents, very pragmatic documents, which has lot of all the areas were explicitly covered through this document, and the reforms were to be introduced. And for that, for the first time, the 3-year degree program was introduced. Examining boards were made. Universities were more university. Agriculture, engineering universities were separated from or upgraded from college to university, and the country really started progressing, developing with reference to Ayub Khan's reform. Inter-University Board, IUB, was established to look after higher education in the country and to develop a coordination amongst the higher education institutions in the country. Research culture was introduced, industrial development was introduced. So what we see that Ayub Khan really did a lot for this country, and his decade for development was very popular, and there was a train march from Khyber to Karachi showing the development taking place. He also introduced family planning process, family planning department introduced in order to, it was a awareness to ensure that the rapid growth of population is very harmful for this country, and technical measures be adapted to keep the population under manageable limits. But what we see that this constant working of Ayub Khan was for 11 years, but hardly there were some wrong decisions also, and there were some wrong policies which did not work and led to the fall of Ayub Khan. The very important thing, the causes for the downfall of Ayub Khan was the war. Before that, let me say, rigging in the election. The election which took place in 1965, generally people have the concern that some rigging has taken place, because before that it was Abdo, and no political leader would dare come and face Ayub Khan in his political struggle. Finally, the political parties manipulated Mohtarama Fatma Jinnah, the sister of the father of the nation, to compete for the office of the President of Pakistan under 1962 Constitution in 1965 election. All political parties were supporting her, and she was the best candidate and the most favorite candidate at that point of time. She was in a very winning situation, particularly in East Pakistan, and in West Pakistan also she had a good support. That suddenly on the morning of the results, after the day of the election, next morning when the results were announced, she lost. So people were not satisfied with the results of the election, and they showed a lot of resentment. On the other hand, immediately after that, and people say that diversion to that situation took place, and the war of 1965, September 1965 started. Pakistan made a lot of victories in the war, and this time it was a formal war, and Pakistan was attacked, and Pakistan reacted back, and led to a lot of success. India went to United Nations, and finally Russia, the then Soviet Union, showed interest in making an agreement between the two countries, and it was at Tashkent that a pact was finalized. Please keep in mind that at this point of time, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto was the foreign minister of Pakistan, and he was the one who introduced in Ayub Khan's time Pakistan to China, or opened up China to the outside world, and in that that's how the base for our friendship between Pakistan and China started. So Zulfikar Ali Bhutto was recognized as a very shrewd foreign minister, very intelligent foreign minister, and when agreement of Tashkent was signed, it was not accepted by the masses, and people were not satisfied with the clauses of the pact, because whatever Pakistan gained on the battlefield, unfortunately lost on the table. So this was a very tragic situation, and people were dissatisfied. Then when we talk of economic development, lot of economic development was taking place, lot of industrialization was taking place, lot of job opportunities were taking place, lot of new industries were being set, lot of people were finding jobs, a lot of exports are taking place, but largely speaking, fruit of economic development was not distributed at the masses level, at the common man level. The few families emerged, it was very popular that only 22 families are taking benefit of Ayub's regime, and they had the licenses, they had the permits, they had the resources, they were given loans, so wealth of the nation was just concentrating in few hands, and that generated a lot of problem, a lot of dissatisfaction in the people, and this led to the agitation of the people, and public demand was resignation of the president. So what we see that Ayub Khan had a very tough time. Ayub Khan had a very difficult time in his last days. His initial days were very good. His initial time was very impressive. His initial time was very productive, but such corruption sneak into the system or got into the system, which badly affected the system, and instead of good name and good position brought a very bad name to the government, and finally people were extremely upset and dissatisfied, because the one very important incident which took place was like hike in the price of the sugar from just like a small hike in the price of sugar, and that triggered a situation that people came out on the streets. It was political frustration also prevalent because of Abdo. The politicians were limited, restricted, and that was also very frustrating. In fact, and since there was a strict censor on the newspaper, so media was also limited, restricted, and television was introduced, but it was a state-controlled activity. Newspaper were state-controlled, and the biggest trigger was the advertisement. The biggest thing was to ensure that nobody speaks out against the president. So largely speaking, there was a lot of dissatisfaction, there was a lot of distrust, there was a lot of frustration in the people, and that frustration created a situation that people were compelled to come out on the street. And when the mob came out on the street, it was unmanageable. It was uncontrollable. Though Ayub Khan wanted to handle the situation in a very professional manner, but people were not willing to compromise, people were not willing to listen to Ayub Khan, and he was left with no option than to hand over power to army chief of that time, Yahya Khan. And it was 1969, and Yahya Khan imposed again a martial law. So Pakistan got its second martial law, and this time again the Constitution of Pakistan of 1962 was abrogated. So students, we have a very weak record of Constitution up to that time, and Yahya Khan as army chief took over the power and became the chief president and chief martial law administrator. He took some very drastic steps, and the first thing is he removed about 303 top bureaucrats from their offices. They were sacked, and this was a very big shake-up as far as the civil bureaucracy of Pakistan is concerned. Then he also finished one unit which was established some time back, and in 1970 he created 4 provinces out of West Pakistan. So this was again a very, though there was a very pressing demand, but he accepted that, and with that the principle of parity between East Pakistan and West Pakistan was abolished. This means that the big brother would be the big brother, and the youngest brother would be the youngest brother, that is the youngest province, and that would be not on the basis of geography, but on the basis of population. And now you remember, when we talk of the arms of the state, of elements of the state, geography is there, but more important are the people. He came out with the martial law, interim law, under which he started working, the government start operating, and that is known as legal framework order, LFO. This was an interim law issued in March 1997, imposed in 1970. The basic principles of LFO was that constitutional making process should start, and a future constitution for Pakistan need to be proposed. Then he was of the very clear view that the powers should finally go back to the civilian, because martial law is no solution to the running of the country, and finally it should be the civilian rule which is important. And out of that they start proposing rules and regulation for election, and they also established seats for the various assembly. In National Assembly, Pakistan, since remained a federation, there would be a federal government, and with the federal government there would be 313 seats, 300 for the men and 13 seats for the provinces. The distribution of population was that for East Pakistan there would be 162 seats for men and 7 seats for female. Whereas for West Pakistan, since its population was less, it had 138 seats for men and 6 seats for women. So with this, if you see, the total number of seats would be 313. Now, what happened that Yahya Khan announced the elections to take place, and for taking the elections to take place, a general election took place in December 1970. We have seen that LFO was promulgated in March 1970, and election laws were there, and then we see that in December 1970 election took place. Before that, let me put things right, that in West Pakistan, Maulana Maududi was arrested, and because he gave certain fatwas, and out of that he was sentenced to death, which never took place, but he was put in jail, and that was to be. On the other hand, a leader from East Pakistan, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, who was very vocal during earlier 11-12 years in the civilian government, who raised the issue of the language, who raised the issue of the priority, who raised so many issues, was arrested, and he was charged against a conspiracy for breaking the country. But in the last days of Ayub Khan released, and he was also sentenced to death, and Ayub Khan pardoned him also, and Maulana Maududi also, but that was not solving the problem. They went back and they contested for election, and prepared a lot of preparation. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman came with an idea of 6 points plan for the election or for the future of Pakistan, and on the West Pakistan side it was Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, who was going around with Islamic idea of socialist philosophy and socialism. Now, what we see, out of 167 seats for East Pakistan, 160 for men and 7 for female, Awami League got 160 seats. This was a record achievement. This means that the Sheikh Mujibur Rahman philosophy was very acceptable, was very pragmatic as far as East Pakistan is concerned. On the other hand, out of 130 seats in West Pakistan, 138 seats in West Pakistan, and East Pakistan there was 162 seats, and 100 seats went to Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. 2 seats went to Awami League only of Maulana Bhashani. Whereas out of 138 seats in the West Pakistan, Bhutto got 80 seats. So a fair, good majority, 81 seats. Majority seats, good seats. Now, the issue was transfer of power, and that was very critical phase in the history of Pakistan. Bhutto emerged, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto emerged as a leader from West Pakistan and Sheikh Mujibur Rahman as a leader from East Pakistan. But Sheikh Mujibur Rahman was commanding double the majority, single person, double the majority, and he didn't needed any other support to form the government, and it was his right to form the government because he had a very clear majority. Whereas Zulfikar Ali Bhutto did some negotiation with Sheikh Mujibur Rahman because Zulfikar Ali Bhutto was instrumental in getting the Sheikh Mujibur Rahman out of the jail, out of the gallows, and out of the death penalty. It was Bhutto who manipulated the situation in such a way that Sheikh Mujibur Rahman could be released. But the agreement between Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and Bhutto could not reach. And finally, the transfer of power between the three leaders, the President of Pakistan, the government, the Awami League, and the People's Party could not be made. And on 23rd March 1971, the session was to be convened, but unfortunately that could not take place. And finally, on March 25th, an army action took place. As a result of army action in 1971, in East Pakistan, lot of killings took place, lot of atrocities take place. The Pakistan army sent its best soldiers, best generals, but they could not control the civil disobedience which was generated, and finally civil war started, and that resulted in the dismemberment of East Pakistan. India played a very dirty role and took revenge of 1965 war. They attacked even East Pakistan, and Indo-Pakistan war started, which ended in the separation of East Pakistan. So with this, what we see that a very odd era ended as far as Pakistan is concerned. Pakistan was a big loser. The political game was over, and with our all mistakes, we suffered a lot. And finally, we lost our one wing, which was very tragic, which was very humiliating. We lost our 93,000 soldiers. We have a very bad image around the world, and Pakistan economy, Pakistan armed forces, Pakistan's morale, Pakistan industry, Pakistan technology badly suffered. Anyhow, on 16 December 1971, East Pakistan fell, and a separate country for the people of East Pakistan emerged as Bangladesh, and that got all the recognitions. So students, in our today's lecture, we have covered almost like 23 years, 24 years of Pakistan, and these 24 years, except few years of development, were very critical years, were very bad years. But we had two constitutions, we had so many problems, we have small wars, we had two wars, we have other crises, and with the start of very difficult position, we had a very difficult survivor, but finally we lost one wing. So we stop for today's session over here, that the first phase of Pakistan was very challenging, very ticklish. We were establishing certain systems, and now in the next session, inshallah, we would cover after 1971 the political development, the constitutional formation, the governments, how they worked, how Pakistan continued, what developments have taken place, what would be our focus area. We would be talking of the current Pakistan which exists, geographically current Pakistan exists, that we will talk in the next session. I hope you enjoyed it. With this, thank you very much, and Allah Hafiz.